Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Damage Report under lockdown. It is a day, and a very special day indeed, because it's not only JR Day, but it is, as it should be, JR Wednesday. How's it going, JR?
I'm wondering at this point whether or not people just expect Tuesday now because it's been such a regular occurrence.
Well, I don't know if everybody, it's not necessarily, there is a pattern to the guess. It's not necessarily obvious, but the fact that Emma does every other Tuesday leads to you guys switching every other week. People probably have started to catch on to that.
Yeah, if they realize what day it is anymore, yes, they have.
I had briefly, while we were getting ready for this, and thank you for everybody who's already coming into the chat room, while we were waiting to go, I realized while we're waiting to start, we always have a hot mic because, as many people have seen behind the scenes, it would take at least a little bit of work for me to not have the mics active. But then I realized it's actually not that difficult. And so I briefly turned it off. I saw one person get mad and I was like, okay, fine, I'll turn it back on. And so you got to hear our beard prep and drinking.
They could tell that you turned it off. I couldn't tell what there was a silence. There's usually usually
you'd still hear it,
but
it wouldn't go to the stream.
Right.
But it is there, everybody. It's okay. And also, whenever we start the stream, I always see at least one person say, I finally get to catch the show live. And I think, it's a quarantine. Where have you been these other mornings? I don't know. Maybe people are going on hikes or something.
Helping their kids on Zoom meetings for school.
That's probably true. Yeah, I guess actually teaching their kids. Whew. Okay, I take it back. That sounds rough. Thank you for being here, JR. Very much looking forward to doing the show with you. Thank you, everybody who's already in the chat room. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. There's certainly been a lot of people in the chat room asking you to, and we would appreciate that you do that. Also, you can interact with us live by tweeting at hashtag TDR Live, participating in the super chat, or just commenting, and we'll be reading some of those as we go along. We got a lot that we're going to be talking about today in the show. We've got an update on the incredibly irresponsible and dangerous rhetoric coming out of Fox News. We're going to get to that. Meatpacking plants, the target of the most recent invocation of the Defense Production Act. We've got, let's see, what's going to happen to workers who don't offer themselves up to be sacrificed on the altar of capitalism. Mike Pence unmasked. That should be exciting. And what does the NRA think you should do with your stimulus checks? I will give you one guess. Let's see if you can figure it out, people.
Rent?
Yeah, it's probably that. It's probably rent. Yeah, they're being oddly responsible. Anyway, okay, so we're gonna get to that over the course of an hour. Why don't we get started, JR? Lots of news to get to. Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you stick around to the end, if there's time, there is a new presidential candidate, or at least an exploratory committee. We're going to discuss that. Very exciting. Could reshape the entire race. So we'll give our thoughts on that near the end. Okay. You might have seen in the last week, a study has come out showing that they compared people who watched Tucker Carlson and people who watched Sean Hannity. And they found that watching Sean Hannity, because of his refusal to accept the seriousness of the pandemic, led to more cases of coronavirus. Now, obviously, both of them have been very defensive about President Trump and have not necessarily been saying what scientists say they should, but they gave credit in this study to Tucker Carlson for being more responsible. And he is not going to take that credit sitting down, because over the past couple of days, he has gone on a tear, arguing that the lockdowns should end, that they were never necessary to begin with, and more. So we're not going to play everything because you'd literally lose your mind, but here's a little bit of a mashup of some of what Tucker Carlson has been saying recently on his show.
By the numbers, the annual flu is much more dangerous to children than the coronavirus is. Now, why is this relevant right now? Well, it's relevant because we've shut down education nationwide. Many schools and colleges are now considering staying closed in the fall. For the kids who go to those schools and their families, this is a disaster. Shut up and lock down, they say. You're saving lives when you do. People will die if you don't. Every day you hear that, but it's not science. Those are political slogans. You may remember what they first told us back in February and March. They said, we have to take radical steps in order to, quote, flatten the curve. Well, 6 weeks later, we're happy to say that curve has been flattened, but it's likely not because of the lockdowns. The virus just isn't nearly as deadly as we thought it was. All of us, including on this show, everybody thought it was. But it turned out not to be. Hospitals never collapsed. Outside of a tiny number of places, they never came close to collapsing, at least not from an influx of infected patients. Instead, something remarkable happened, something amazing, really without parallel in American history. Matter. For example, we spent millions of dollars and more than a decade trying to find a vaccine for the SARS virus. Scientists never developed one. That's a shame, but did we halt life in the United States in response? We didn't. In fact, you may not even remember that any of that happened. The striking thing is the science has not changed that much since then. Unfortunately, American politics have changed a lot.
Okay, so look, that was a lot, and there's a lot to cover there. I mean, we could have taken any couple of minutes from his show. The sheer amount of condescending, disdain-fueled lack of understanding or appreciation for science there from this, and let's recognize this, as everyone always should, this incredibly wealthy and privileged elite, this heir to a fortune, Tucker Carlson, who loves to be talked about as if he's some sort of regular man who understands the struggle of regular people. I've got several points that I want to make, but JR, I'm going to give you first crack at it. What did you think about Tucker Carlson's new turn on coronavirus?
Okay, so when you listen to guys like Tucker Carlson, his skill is based, and it can easily be overlooked. His skill is in saying things that are strictly his opinion and posing them as fact. So you have to look for evidence when people like him are talking. So, I mean, I have to analyze these guys all the time. The easy ones are the Sean Hannitys of the world who just, they're puppeting talking points from Trump and they're looking to please him. Those are obvious. And people still like him because it feels good to have someone with that kind of platform saying the ridiculous things that are in your head in support of your president. So, but what Tucker Carlson does is he'll say, and we've reached that point, and it's totally gotten there, and we're done with it. Based on what? Those are opinions, but he's saying them like it's been established fact. So when you're listening to him, he'll pepper in some opinions, he'll fill it with opinions and pepper it with a couple of facts here and there to act like everything he's saying is a fact. I have a friend from college that was so good at that. He'd say things definitively. He'd say things without any kind of real evidence behind it. But he'd say it so convincingly to people that he'd go, oh, yeah, that's right. Chris said so. Let's go do it.
Yeah.
Yes, his name is Chris, but I'm not giving you his last name. But and I was always the guy who was like, Chris is BSing you guys. You didn't hear how empty that statement was, and no one knew it. So that's his skill in doing that. It has nothing to do with him actually giving you any kind of a fact, its basis for his argument. It's just his argument posed as facts.
Yeah. He has mastered a sort of delivery that is supposed to stop you from recognizing that he is doing the same sort of explicitly biased partisan news coverage that all of the rest of the opinion people on Fox are, and indeed spreading conspiracy theories as well. But he talks in this tone, and even when he gets mad, he doesn't get as obviously mad as like a Sean Hannity or something like that. And he's reading it all off of a teleprompter, and so it seems reasonable. And he and a lot of on the right, there's these two doctors who run an urgent care or something like that in California, and they've said recently that based on their research, this is far less deadly than it was believed to be. So those two doctors, because they don't think that the quarantine is necessary, they've been all over Fox recently. And indeed, Tucker Carlson in that show was using their work that's been described as incredibly reckless, riddled with basic statistical errors, all of it. And obviously the self-interest as well. But he uses it because he doesn't care. He's not interested in the peer review process of these urgent care doctors' work. It's convenient, and so he throws it out there. But just really fast to respond to a few of the individual things that he said. He's back to the regular flu is worse. He said, it's not bad for kids, so just send the kids back. Now, I really want to focus on this statement because we criticized Donald Trump for saying this incredibly ignorant thing yesterday, not understanding that even if we believe that kids are less likely to die from the coronavirus, they can carry it and spread it to other people. Seriously. Yep. They can give it to their family. They can give it to the elderly. They can give it to the immunocompromised. Kids are great at spreading disease. That's like the main thing they do for the first 7 years of their life. But Tucker Carlson is either so stupid that he doesn't understand that or doesn't care and doesn't want you to understand that. So if you ever get some sort of knee-jerk need to give him some sort of credit for being intellectually honest or fair or free-thinking or anything like that, remember, he's willing to let your grandparents die by lying about the threat posed by kids going back to school. Beyond that, let's see. Remember, he's doing this show where he's saying the lockdowns aren't necessary, there's no proof they mattered, right on the a couple days after research showing that the death toll in the first few weeks could be as high as twice as what was reported. He doesn't care about that. He's not interested in the actual numbers, unless it was done by those 2 doctors at an urgent care in California. He's willing to spread that. And overall, the point that I want to make about his commentary there is, what did we say at the very beginning when these measures were enacted? We said, if we are lucky, they will be so successful that they will be called unnecessary. Because he says, well, hospitals didn't collapse. Okay, but the whole point was to try to stop hospitals from collapsing by trying to limit how many people get coronavirus in a very limited amount of time. So that happened, and that is proof that it wasn't necessary. Somehow he thinks that even though we're still losing 1,500 to 2,600 people every single day, that's not impressive. He's not impressed by that. He thinks that everyone being out there congregating would have no greater amount of deaths. That this, I would honestly say, I am shocked at the extent to which Americans have complied with these lockdowns around the country. I would not have predicted that they would have, or that they would have ever been put into effect in the first place, but they were. He thinks none of that mattered, or at least there's no reason to believe that it would have mattered. That an infectious disease would not spread more if more people were around each other. And really fast, so he started off with the children's stuff, complete boneheaded, ignorant stupidity to say that it doesn't matter if the kids go back to school. But then he ended with the SARS thing, because again, like you said, like Chris, he wants to pretend that he's being reasonable. He's making a comparison to another pandemic. He says, well, we don't need, a vaccine for SARS anymore. Yes, because SARS never got nearly as bad, partially because it's not nearly as infectious. It's harder to spread. This is a different disease. He's saying that not on February 1st. He's saying it when 58,000 people have already died of the disease and thousands more die every day. He said there the curve has already been flattened. Okay, look at this graphic. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not still rising every day, but it's still thousands of deaths every single day, and he's not impressed. So the guy that gets given all this credit, even in that study that I was telling you about, he is saying that's not enough. These lockdowns shouldn't continue. They should have been put into effect in the first place. And he's saying that while he's broadcasting by himself, he's not having in-studio guests. He's protecting himself, as indeed all Fox hosts are. But the rest of you, you don't need these protections anymore. In fact, you never needed them.
They gave up the game from the beginning when the Glenn Becks of the world and Lieutenant Governor from Virginia, I believe it was Virginia, when they all said, hey, it's okay if we die for the sake of saving our economy for other people. Which, by the way, when they said we're willing to die, it doesn't mean themselves personally, even though Lieutenant Governor said so. I'm trying to blank on his name, Dan Patrick. There it is. So when those guys come forward and say things like that, they gave up the game a long time ago. So after that, everything that they've said as far as arguing against it, arguing against quarantine, arguing against the results, arguing against the fact that hospitals didn't get overrun and shut down, which, by the way, many hospitals are overrun. Yeah, let's keep it real. So just because they didn't literally collapse on themselves like an implosion of a building doesn't mean that they're not still pressed and stressed for equipment and are not overrun by patients, when other patients that need other medical attention on a normal basis when a pandemic isn't stretching across the world are trying to get in there. These are the strains that happen. So let's not just write off the fact that hospitals are just doing great, because I know several nurses and none of them are doing great. Just to keep it real, none of them are doing great. So when they give up the game early on like that, and they know, and then from that point on, everything else they said you can now write off as BS or trying to fulfill that agenda of their predictions that none of this was a thing in the first place. So as you pointed out, put your money where your mouth is. Jump on that bus, Tucker. Take a trip down to Fox News headquarters and bang on the door for them to let you in. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
So apparently, what you're looking for is for the minions who follow you to be your guinea pigs to allow this to continue, so you can continue on with your economy. When he says we need to go ahead and risk ourselves to push this economy forward, he means you.
Exactly. And I'm not going to play the video I was going to, but Chris Hayes called him out and said, go chop some pork if you want. I mean, after all, like, look at the industries that have continued. Like, the frontline workers are dying at high rates. People in meatpacking plants are getting exposed and dying. Grocery store workers are getting exposed and dying. People in transportation are getting exposed and dying. The things that haven't been shut down are severely limited because they are essential. They can't be shut down. Those people are disproportionately being affected. I think it sort of makes sense to imagine that if all the rest were still going on, we'd probably see a similar pattern. But you know what? I'm not Tucker Carlson. I just don't have that sort of amazing galaxy brain that he has. And really fast, well, I'm focusing on him here mainly because people don't seem to get that he is just as dangerous in his rhetoric as Sean Hannity, and perhaps more so because it's not as obvious. He said in another show, the death rate is not devastating. Well, not to him, because he doesn't care. These are peasants dying, and he's not interested in peasants. Another Fox host compared saying that there's need for more coronavirus testing to the same thing as wearing a helmet if there's snow on the ground. It's not necessary. Why are you saying we need more testing? Let's
go with the whole helmet thing. So football players wear helmets and they get all these concussions and later in life issues with their brain damage and all this stuff, which leads them many times to suicide or just pain for the rest of their lives. They wore helmets during their time playing football. It was a preventative measure, and it probably helped them not lose their lives while they were playing, which would have happened. So if football players are wearing helmets, which they're trying to advance and make better, crazy how that works, you guys, so they can protect them further. Do you now say, hey, what are we wearing helmets for in football? Because it protected people. Look, everyone's not dying on the field every day. Because, by the way, early football, American football, people died on the field from playing the sport. So now we're not doing that. So because we made that change for this preventative measure of wearing helmets and shoulder pads and wrist pads and ribs and all this stuff to protect you from injury, should we not use it anymore because it worked? That's the logic we're going with.
It's not necessary. Because you know what? Because it's more exciting for me to watch other people play without pads. So, whatever. What if they get injured? Who cares? Another host said that COVID-19 is only terrible for a very small group of people. This is the pro-life group. That only kills some people, not others. And only people with like pre-existing conditions, super rare things like heart problems, respiratory illnesses, diabetes, those things that, tens of millions of Americans don't have that stuff. And also on Fox News recently, Mike Huckabee and his guests suggested that the coronavirus is a Chinese bioweapon. So it's just, workers need to be ground up. And conspiracy theories from from right-wing websites. That's what it is. It looks nice, high production quality, but it's as crazy as anything on the internet. Okay, before we turn to our next topic, let me read a few of these comments and super chats. Oh, also, before I get to that, I wanted to send out a special thank you to David from Chicago for a very generous donation to TYT that helped us reach our April goal. He donated $10,000, which is just amazing, above and beyond anything that I could have possibly imagined. So thank you, David, and everyone who's been contributing at tyt.com/go. Really do appreciate that. I wanted to read just a little bit of what David sent in to the network. He said, in part because it has to do with our work, he said, I watched last night's True North Part 1 and enjoyed it very much. It was a pleasant respite in the midst of stay-at-home orders and general craziness in the world at this moment in time. And kudos to the production team on that. Nicely done. I look forward to seeing more in that series. I hope today is a wonderful one for you, and stay safe and healthy. Thank you so much. I'm glad that anybody is getting a chance to watch True North again and enjoys it. But thank you, David, for that. And anyone else, if you have the ability, if you're in a position where you can help to support TYT until things get back to normal, you can do that at tyt.com/go. With that, Marie Telez sent us a big thumbs up. Thank you. Zane says, you still owe us puppies and kittens, please. Let's see, where are we at on the likes today? I know we keep missing the cats. We're not quite there. We're at 666 actually in likes, so that's
who's cats?
That's scary. Oh well, Francesca and Jordan, but the animals are never around when we hit 1,000. Maybe today. Oh. Maybe we can today. Christine says pets, please. Matt says thank you. You're the eye of the hurricane. Thank you, Matt. Charlie says, since when did the GOP care about education? Yeah, it's like they're really worried that kids aren't getting to go to second grade. That grinds their gears. They want Betsy DeVos to have control over them once again. Joseph Laundry says, I love JR's opinion, always very nuanced. Have either of you watched Planet of the Humans yet? We've talked about that in previous days, but thank you, Joseph, for recognizing.
I guess also one thing, I was told by my wife that I'm yelling when I do this, so she can hear me in other rooms.
Oh, really?
Am I yelling? Maybe a poll. You guys can tell me. Am I yelling during these things?
Apparently, I knock on the desk. I didn't realize that. Rob says, time to launch Operation Hide Behind the Pores, according to Tucker Carlson. Yeah. Lakelilil says, improved critical reasoning skills will disempower people like Carlson. I hope. Doesn't seem like more Americans are really getting those skills, unfortunately. And let's see. On hashtag TDR Live, the ice is melting, says Tucker says the curve has flattened. What curve is he talking about? Maybe in some limited areas. Unprecedented Madness says Tucker is just mad he can't get the pores back to work so his investments and portfolio look good. That sort of screams through in everything he and the other hosts are saying. All millionaires, by the way. They make millions for doing the weird thing like we do that's supposedly a job but is not hard work. Stop acting as if you're suffering, Tucker Carlson. Okay. Let's see. Liberal Snowflake says, how can you not understand that the number of deaths will be lower when only 10% of people get infected? Okay, the document just moved. But are contagious for up to 2 weeks when quarantined. OMG, explain your logic. Exactly. The whole point is that we're trying to stop them from spreading to other people. We should not need to have to, like, he went to, like, Ivy League schools and stuff like that. But he either doesn't understand that or is paid millions of dollars a year to pretend that he doesn't understand that.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, why don't we move on to another topic?
Yeah.
Donald Trump made a surprise announcement late last night saying that meat processing plants are going to continue operating, declaring them critical infrastructure as the nation confronts growing disruptions to the food supply. So they are going to be using the government and the DPA to do whatever they can to force these meatpacking plants to remain open, potentially doing this because a number have shut down because they've been sort of epicenters for the spread of coronavirus. We've already had, let's see, as of when I made these graphics, 20 meatpacking and processing workers have died from coronavirus. At least 6,500 have been affected. Huge numbers for one industry. According to the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, at least 22 plants processing meat from pork to chicken have closed at some point after clusters of employees tested positive for COVID-19. So he is going to be forcing them to stay open. They're shutting down because of the fear that their workers are being exposed. And I would assume, I'm not an inspector of pork, I would assume the fear is that some of the meat might be tainted as well. And so they're shutting down. Something that, by the way, have you been given the impression over the last few years that meat processing plant CEOs are quick to shut things down when there's fears about health concerns? That they just do it willy-nilly at the first sign of any danger? That has not been my impression, JR.
When they see anything in their processing or any of these I guess I'm not sure what there's a term to call for these specific plants where they toss the baby chicks into the grinder and all that stuff. Those horrible videos that we've all seen. But when those happen and when there's a speck of any kind of germ or even dust, and they're on it and they clean it, they're not going to tolerate any kind of filth or disgusting conditions in their plants. We've seen that over and over and over and over again. So when something like this breaks out, whenever they let it happen, they know that it's a big problem. Mm-hmm. Sarcasm, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you need to make clear, JR, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to say it, see how people respond, and then a day later say it was sarcasm. But anyway, so he's been very hesitant, by the way, Donald Trump, to use the Defense Production Act. He doesn't want to get involved or whatever. He didn't want to do it for masks and PPE, stuff like that early on. For pork, he does. And okay, look, devil's advocate, a lot of people eat meat, they need access to food, whatever. I get that. What I would say is if you are going to invoke this power of the government, which is very rarely used, to keep an industry open, that should be accompanied by the necessary guidance, oversight, and support to make sure that it's done in a safe way. And so let's turn now to all of the things the government is going to be doing to keep these workers and consumers of the food safe. The order did not detail additional precautions companies should take to protect workers, which has led to worries among unions and other workers groups. Oh, no, they're not doing anything. They're saying you have to stay open. Have at it. Do whatever you want. We don't care. But in combination with that, so you have to stay open, even though it is not a hypothetical that this could lead to your workers dying and getting sick. Dozens have died. Thousands have gotten sick. We want you to stay open. We don't expect you to take any additional precautions. And in comments to the media earlier on Tuesday, Trump said he would also shield meatpacking companies from legal liability from worker claims of not being adequately protected, though the order didn't spell out any specifics. So you got to stay open. We're not going to require your companies to do anything different to protect your lives. And when you get sick and when you die, we are going to protect the company from any legal liability.
And also when it comes to unemployment collections or requests due to all this going on, if the company decides to reopen and force you to come back into very unsafe, potentially lethal conditions, if you decide not to, that's a voluntary quit, and you're also no longer eligible for unemployment.
Oh, we're going to get into those quotes in just a little bit. But isn't it interesting that this is the industry that he's choosing to make this move on? Like, I don't find it particularly surprising. I mean, we've been doing a lot of, like, we talk more about food production and regulations over than almost any other news show. But they've been, like, we understand that they're incredibly deferential to the desires of the fossil fuel industry, pharma, and stuff like that. But really, like, food manufacturers, when they want something, they get it. And this is just another example of it. And the thing is, like, the protection from legal liability involving coronavirus, like, I have no doubt that that is going to expand at some point. They want to be protected from lawsuits in all cases. And if you set this precedent where something that we know is going to affect a lot of people, that they won't face any liability on it, why not blanket provide them with protection from other sorts of claims? The unions are seemingly terrified for good reason.
I don't know why they're getting involved. I thought Republicans, conservatives in general, were against government getting involved with the day-to-day operations of a company. So, we slash regulations, eliminate them in many other cases, because we'll just trust the companies to do the right thing. Hey, why are we being so burdensome on these employees? Why can't we just trust them to do the right thing? Hey, if they have a beef with their company, sorry for the pun, if they have any kind of a conflict over this situation, why are we trying to put in any kind of rules that will protect companies from these people? Hey, just let the free market be the free market. If the employees decide not to work, hey, that's something the company has to figure out. If the employees decide to go in, hey, that's something the company's got to figure out. How come we're putting in things from the government to work in this exchange when we're supposed to just leave them alone? Leave them alone. Why are we doing this?
Well, and that's almost exactly, I forget exactly who it was on Fox, but was saying this like a week or two ago, which is you don't need to do these lockdowns and stop people from going to these various companies, because the companies, thanks to supply and demand and the wonderful power and motivating force of capitalism, they're going to voluntarily do everything that's necessary to not spread the disease because they don't want their brand associated with it. Like you're saying, if that's the case, government doesn't need to shield them. They're not going to need a shield because they're going to voluntarily create their own shield to protect their workers and their consumers as well.
All these corporations are amazing, beautiful people that want nothing but the best for the people that work for them. Yeah,
exactly. Well, look, you brought up a great point when you talked about, well, what if people don't go back to work? So why don't we turn to that now?
Okay.
So with the announcement that meat processing plants are going to be forced to remain open and that the companies are going to be protected from any liability, I'm curious what's going to happen with the workers, because I'm reading quotes from people who work at these plants saying they don't understand how this is supposed to work. One named Donald is an employee at a Tyson's Waterloo, Iowa facility who said, "All I know is this is crazy to me because I can't see all these people going back to work. I don't think people are going to go back in there. I'm still trying to figure it out. What is he going to do?" Talking about Trump. Force them to stay open? Force people to go to work? And Donald, that is a very good question. Yes, they are going to force you to go to work or else. And so what does that or else look like? Well, we have a quote from the governor of Iowa, Republican Kim Reynolds, who said, "If you're an employer and you offer to bring your employee back to work and they decide not to, that's a voluntary quit. Therefore, they would not be eligible for the unemployment money." So they're going to force you to go back to work. If you don't go back to work, you're going to lose access to all of those benefits. And by the way, she also said employers who have workers that refuse to return should file a report with Iowa Workforce Development. So between an employer whose employees don't come back, she's like, I got advice for you. Go to this group. They're going to hunt those people down. If you're a worker who's afraid of getting and dying from coronavirus, I got no interest in you.
Yep.
You're quitting. No unemployment benefits. We're done with you.
You're un-American. You're expendable, and we were hoping you could be expendable for our benefit. And since you refuse to, you're just expendable at your own expense, and we're going to make sure that you're out of our way. It's the weeding out of people that the degree to which this whole pandemic has exposed our system and our economic system and our hatred towards our citizens is profound. And I need enough people to realize that, because we're still sitting in the whole like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, they want the best for us. That's why when these checks go out, these $1,200 checks go out and Donald Trump's name is at the bottom of them, or he sends out the letter because he needs more people to see his name at the bottom of it. It's a continuing push to make sure that people think it's all them and you're still nothing. People have to start realizing that you have more power than them if you exercise it. But, this is how they keep inflicting this on you, to make you think, hey, we're going to put you in this corner. We're going to make sure that we supplement these companies, these corporations, to screw you over as much as possible, to beat you into submission. It's a partnership to destroy you if you don't do as you're told. It's crazy. And I know I sound crazy saying it, but that's the bottom line of this. All these different parameters and factors are put into place to where you have no choice anymore.
Yeah.
But they won't say it openly. They'll say that that's what others want that are actually looking to protect you.
They're not at the point of like sending the cops to drag you to your station, but they're doing everything they can to produce the same incentives. It's just amazing. I mean, how many times over the course of like the past month, since the reopen calls have gone about, have we made some sort of analogy to their willingness to like grease the gears of capitalism with the blood of workers, to grind them up and all that stuff? This is how they do it. And they're even doing it in an industry that is about grinding things up. It's really on the nose at this point. The analogy is super clean. Like, you think about it. Your company's going to be forced to open. The CEOs don't get to choose. I don't think that they would. But they're not even getting to choose. So screw, free market or whatever. They have to come open, which means that you have to go to work. You're going to be afraid of getting coronavirus. And if you don't go, that's a voluntary quit. You get no benefits, no unemployment, no anything like that. It's really amazing. Now, there's one other detail to this, coming from Kim Reynolds. So the only exception is for workers getting unemployment after not returning to work is if they are ill with the virus or taking care of a family member who has the deadly disease. Okay, so you won't be forced to go back to work if you already have the disease, which makes sense. Except that you will be forced to go and potentially get the virus.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go if you have a family member that already has the virus. You do have to go get the virus and give it to your family members. I really don't understand what passes for logic with Kim Reynolds here. The entire thing, it's like an insane, like some sort of eldritch horror has come up with this plan. It is definitely going to result in more infections and more deaths in this industry. If I was one of the workers at one of these plants that's about to reopen, I would be terrified.
The policy is obviously there, not for the people who are advocating it. So, I mean, if Kim Reynolds has any family members that are going to bring the virus to her, she's shutting that down. Just saying.
Exactly. And by the way, it's not just Iowa that's going to have this particular policy. You've also got, according to the Texas Workforce Commission, to qualify for unemployment benefits in the state, a worker must be, quote, willing and able to work all the days and hours required for the type of work you're seeking. And so if employees who choose not to return to work, they will become ineligible for unemployment benefits. And if I was doing it, if Texas is doing it, you better believe that other Republican states are going to do it, especially after the precedent has been set. So we, like the working class, got a very small one-time stimulus. Trump sort of laughed off the idea yesterday of a second, even $1,200 check. Very limited protections in some areas from being fired without any sort of compensation, against being evicted and things like that. And those are already going away. And you are going to be forced to go back out there into a situation with the virus that is almost exactly the same as what you would have faced 6 weeks ago if we had never stopped before. They don't have any better treatment. They don't have a vaccine. We're barely doing more testing. We're not even doing half as much as experts say would be necessary to sort of justifiably restart the economy. And they have resisted all calls to get to that point. They could have easily done it. They could have started spending 6 weeks ago any number of billions of other people's dollars to create at least the cover in terms of testing necessary to restart things. But they want to have their cake and mash it in your face too. They want to restart, and they don't want to do what is necessary to protect you. I really don't understand it. It seems homicidal at this point because, again, it isn't their money they'd be spending. They could use taxpayer dollars, public money, to provide the personal protective equipment and testing to preemptively reopen the economy. They could do that. Mm-hmm. If that's what they want, is to get people back to work, get the economy roaring again, they could have done it. But they chose to just start it without the necessary protective measures. I don't understand, other than, and this seems crazy, a desire to see workers die. I don't know what the other explanation is.
Well, it's the seeing workers die is just, it's a result of the policy, because it's capitalism. So the policy is get back to work, get these people back to what you need them to do by any means necessary. Get as much money as you can, and spending as little as possible. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to, if you have a company, you're trying to have very little amount you put out and try and get more in. So this is the same idea. It's just your workers are part of what you got to make sure that you utilize to get your money. So if the idea is to get things started without having to invest anything to make sure you protect the people who are getting you your stuff, hey, let's do it.
Yeah.
If they die, that's not me. This is capitalism, bro. You are expendable because I need to get my money. Bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really think that, I mean, they've been successful in tracking the spread of coronavirus in some areas to these meatpacking plants. There's one area where 90% of the cases were tracked back to one particular plant, and it's just going to become more common. And that meat goes all over. A few plants getting infected, the meat goes all over the country.
That's what I wanted to say. There was last thing. I'm sorry. I know I've been on this forever. This one thing about this is Tyson, I think food companies yesterday said that the food supply chain is getting severed, and all these scary terms. Oh my God, we got to hurry, make sure we get back to work and send these guys to work. And the infection rate goes at this rate. What do you think is going to happen to the food supply chain if everyone that works there has the virus? Mm-hmm. Is it going to continue on, or is it going to end anyway? Or are you going to plug in more people to do the same thing and it infects them as well? And then when that meat comes to your grocery store, after you stand in line to get in your grocery store and you're wearing your mask and your gloves and you go to the meat section, are they going to start placing really large orange stickers on every meat, every package that comes from these infected places and goes, just for full disclosure, this came from the meat packing plant that had 90% of its employees infected. Are you going to buy that meat?
Yeah.
No. Those things are going to be covered up. Those things are not going to happen, but they'll scare you into thinking, oh my God, look, the food supply chain is going to break down. You got to hurry up and kill yourself to make sure. There's ways you can do this. I'm just saying, I'm not saying I have the answers. I don't even know exactly how the transmission of it could be with these types of things. But I get the feeling that if people are told they're getting this meat from places like this, they may not be very comfortable buying it.
I have a theory really fast. I think the person behind this move, you know who it is? It's Cory Booker. You know why I say that? Because if you wanted to create as many vegans as possible, I can't think of any better way to do that than to have 6 months to a year of people associating all meat with getting a fatal disease.
It's going to take a lot, John, because the first couple weeks of this, if you go to the store, there was, everything was off the shelves. People were buying everything. There was no limitations on certain things. I was in like the lunch meat section, hot dogs and stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
All of it was gone except for the vegan and vegetarian options. Those were packed full, just that sliver of the section. And I was like, no matter what, people are not going to buy it. It is way worse.
You're crazy. Try the Beyond Sausage. Just try it once. It's
no,
good.
I'm not saying people have tried it and they didn't like it. They won't try it. That stuff sits on that shelf and people won't buy it. They're like, yeah, I'll buy the fat-free hot dog before I buy the
Well, here's the thing. In those early weeks, when I would go into the store, people might not have been able to buy their sausage, but I was able to get Beyond Sausage, and it was delicious. So these idiots, they really messed up. Okay, really fast. A few super chats before we move on to our next topic, which involves the vice president. Let's see. Oh, we had a pronunciation guide. Yes. Localial. I got you. I see it. Also, Stephanie, happy birthday. I did see that comment in the chat. Oh my God, we got a dog. We got a Sprocket. Is that not the most adorable Wookiee of a dog ever? Everybody.
He
got
came
Sprocket.
over. He smells.
We hit 1,000. Oh, he smells like a dog, like he's supposed to. Everybody, he is a very. I've taken care of him. He's a very sweet dog. He's so cute. Oh my God. Oh, so JR, we got a piece of art. I'm gonna show this to you. You tell me if this reminds you of anybody, okay? Is that not Sprocket? That is totally Sprocket. Thank you.
We see lots of Sprocket lookalikes around. Yes.
Oh, he's so cute.
Okay.
Sorry,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, feel free. We hit 1,000 and you got it. Everybody, hey, pets. You asked for pets. JR delivered pets. Localial says, make P4C, philosophy for children, a compulsory part of your school curricula to improve your country's pro-social behavior, ethical reasoning skills, and critical reasoning skills. I think that would be a good idea. Wellington Smith says, John and JR, I work in infection prevention, and this is our constant frustration. We prevented 1 million deaths, and now you, the public, are mad at us. Arg! Well, we're not. Us too. We're not. Maybe if we were paid millions of dollars every year, then maybe we would be mad at you, but we're not. Latoya says, what about the teachers and administrators who will come into contact with the students? Are they expendable? No, Latoya, you're using common sense.
Exactly.
You need to use Carlson sense. It's a lot more sense. Dollars, really. Millions of them. Kids don't touch anything other than themselves, so how could they possibly spread disease?
There's no adults working at schools.
Cal says, I'm glad we stopped praising that Swanson kid and gone back to calling him out for being the disingenuous and intellectual fraud that he truly is. I would argue I never stopped. I do not understand how. Yeah, anyway. Derek says, my family put together a list of 20 tabletop games. We've been rolling D20, playing and marking them off the list. So far, we've done Lords of Waterdeep, Ticket to Ride, D&D, Marvel Champions, Heroes of Terranoth, and more. Well, we have been playing some games recently. I'm kind of feeling a little bit more Funkoverse in the near future. I've played many of the games that you talked about there. Haven't played Marvel Champions yet, but very fun games. It's a great way to spend the quarantine. And Christopher says, I think that vegetarians disagree with him. Also, John, as anyone told you, you look like Stephen Amell, aka the Arrow. Are you secretly his twin? I don't know who Stephen Amell is. A little. Maybe. Manuel, thank you.
Yeah, it's always hard to, anytime someone says you look like someone, the hardest person to convince is that person. Because you're like, yeah, I look at myself. I know what I look like every day, but I'm going to find all the things that I don't look like.
Except for Brett and John Krasinski. That's undeniable.
Oh,
I think they're related.
It's Brett and whoever plays Deadpool. I always forget
Ryan Reynolds?
Yeah, it's 100%.
It's both of them.
Similar voice, same like comedic timing. Like they think the same. Like, no, it's not even just the way they look. They all look the same and they act the same. He's the same person.
Okay, everybody, let's do a quick vote before we jump back in the news. Brett Ehrlich, does he look like John Krasinski or Ryan Reynolds? One for John Krasinski, 2 for Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
You can throw Vince Vaughn in there too. He doesn't look like him. Anyways, that's 1 John Krasinski, 2 Ryan Reynolds. This is a scientific survey here. Very professional.
If you knew, I'm going to go ahead and tilt the scales because I'm unfair like that. If you knew Brett, he acts like him. Trust me.
He kind of does. He probably hates that he does, but he does. Nobody tweet this to him. He can't know. Okay, so the first thing that came in was a 1. So, I'm just going to stop the voting right there. It's John Krasinski.
You got 4 1s, bro. You got 5.
They're all 1s.
Right,
there's a 2, but it's rare. Okay, sorry, bud. I got some good news for you. It's John Krasinski.
You're absolutely wrong.
Okay, I see some 3s. Did you not hear what I said? Okay, a lot of 1s. Mostly 1s. 9 out of 10 at least. Maybe 19 out of 20. Okay, with that, we do have 2 very important topics to get through with the limited time that we have left. So why don't we jump back into it? Good chance you've probably seen some of the footage from Mike Pence's recent visit to a hospital. Here he is, and I want you to notice not what's there, but what's missing. Okay, so that's Mike Pence, the guy that I think is still technically in charge of the entire thing, the entire response, not wearing a mask at the Mayo Clinic, even though they later clarified and then deleted the tweet that they had asked him to do it, and he declined to do so. Everyone else there being very responsible, wearing personal protective equipment. Mike Pence, not interested, not doing it.
So they had to, first of all, newsflash. If you delete a tweet, you should probably explain why you did, because everyone knows you deleted the tweet. Just heads up for anybody out there. If you delete a tweet, you're going to have to go and explain, because people say, oh, I'm going to come up with a reason why, and that's going to be the narrative. So when you say he went in there and you denied putting it on, you might as well leave it up, because that's obviously what happened. So in this case, I'm not sure if the outrage is about him going in there without a mask because he's surrounded by folks who potentially have it or are suffering from it, who are trying to get over it, and he could be infected, or vice versa. Because the first thing I thought was, hey, bro, if you walk around like this in the Mayo Clinic with no mask on, where else are you going around with no mask? Who else are you interacting with no mask?
Yep.
And now there's vulnerable people around you. And who are you passing this on to? This has been the conservative approach to this the whole time. Every time someone says, hey, you can be asymptomatic and still carry it, still have it, still spread it.
Yeah.
They go, oh my God, really? This is new to me.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like Brian Kemp. He's just figuring out stuff about it now. Well, look, he was asked about this, so I'm going to give him a chance to respond before I give my thoughts. Here is Mike Pence.
Well, let me say, as Vice President of the United States, I'm tested for the coronavirus on a regular basis, and everyone who is around me is tested for the coronavirus. And when the CDC issued guidelines about wearing a mask, it was their recognition that people that may have the coronavirus could prevent the possibility of conveying the virus to someone else by wearing a mask. And since I don't have the coronavirus, I thought it'd be a good opportunity for me to be here, to be able to speak to these researchers, these incredible healthcare personnel, and look them in the eye and say thank you.
Yeah,
well,
would have been tough to look him in the eye with that mask that covers your
also
mouth
let's keep it real.
and
Let's keep
not
it real.
your eyes.
Keep it real. So what did his appearance? Sorry, John, you haven't got to the point yet. What is his appearance at the Mayo Clinic in that day have to do with his approach and his tackling of this task force enforcing of the coronavirus? What is his reason for being there outside of a photo op and for political reasoning?
Yeah.
Again, if you talk and speak to everyone, you can go around and do all this. You just want to look them in the eye. That's the reason. You just want to look them in the eye, or did you want the camera to see you looking them in the eye?
Yep.
While you're at the Mayo Clinic?
The
Keep it
thing
real.
is, like, I'm not opposed to like photo ops. Like they can do it if they're being responsible. Put on the mask, go there, take some photos. But they can't do that. Okay? He could, and by the way, I saw someone in the chat said the Mayo Clinic should have denied him access without wearing the mask. 100% right. They should have blocked him. I understand why they didn't. But like, I would get in LA, I would get thrown out of a convenience store if I wasn't wearing a mask.
Yes.
He goes in to a hospital, and it reminded me like of a little kid. Well, here's all the reasons why clearly I could never have it, and I don't need to work. Just put it on. Stop with your stupid little evasive excuses and put on the mask, because you still could have talked to them. You still could have done your photo op. I don't want you contributing to people trying to come up with reasons why they don't need to have it. Because I'm feeling fine, because I don't have a fever, because I haven't been around people. There's plenty of reasons why I don't need to wear one. Every American is looking for excuses to not have to abide by the same regulations that everyone else does. That is the core thing at the center of our being as Americans. They don't need to be encouraged in that. And they have been so far from the very beginning. Do you remember this? When Trump says that CDC recommends masks, but he won't wear one, and he will not, saying, I mean, I can't be meeting with like foreign heads of state wearing a mask. I think it'd be a great idea, especially when visiting with visitors from other countries, to not be wearing a mask. This is not about the protection that they have or the testing that they've already done. This is another example of how stupid and dumb and weak conservative masculinity is. They think it looks weak to wear a mask, and so they refuse to do so, even though that leads to a higher chance that they will get a disease that could kill them. It is dumb, dumb, dumb. That's what makes it conservative masculinity.
Ask him if he'll go hang out with Boris Johnson in his face and share forks and spoons with him. See if they'll share a straw with him, since this is all great. So Mike Pence, by the way, also revealed one other thing, which we knew already, but he goes, I'm not worried about it. I'm the effing vice president of the United States. You know what I can do? I can get tested every day. By the way, that's one of the problems that we've got, is that everyone can't. So when you go and flaunt your privilege and you're like, you know who I am? I can get a test every day. Like, you don't realize how you're pushing that in people's faces who are desperate for a test because they don't know what's happening. Or they've got a family member that is sick and they can't get a test. And like, man, it's pretty obvious of what's going on here, but I can't do anything about it. And you go and flaunt. Here's my excuse for not wearing a mask, is because I'm the vice president. I can do what I want. I've got access to things that you don't have access to. No, that wasn't his energy in saying that. But you got to think about how you come off. Yeah. You got to know the situation and know how you look in conveying it. It's a problem, bro. You got to start connecting. This is what out of touch looks like.
Exactly. And I want to just briefly give credit to one of the people who most forcefully called out why Mike Pence shouldn't have, from the very beginning, shouldn't have been involved in this effort, considering his own record in his own state on matters of healthcare and disease. AOC tweeted in response to this video, when I warned everybody in February that Pence doesn't believe in science and shouldn't be in charge of COVID response, I meant it. But I admit I did not have VP visits COVID patients without wearing a mask on my bingo board. Yeah, and I didn't have inject yourself with bleach either, man. Every day is a wake-up call. It's like the damage report, but honestly, it should be the mental damage report, because that is what we're reporting on, is insane news that shouldn't exist. Okay. We are getting close to the end of the hour. I will catch up at the end on some of the tweets and comments, but I don't want to keep JR too long, so why don't we roll right through to our last story. Okay. If you are one of the Americans who's been lucky enough to get your stimulus check, which of course millions and millions of Americans have not, what are you going to spend it on? Well, conveniently, the NRA has a suggestion in the April 23rd article of their magazine. They said, check out these sweet deals from more than 10 companies. You can get scope mounts and magazines, and you can turn that stimulus directly into another gun, which is definitely what you need right now. How are you going to survive a disease if you can't shoot it in the face? So if you get that money, use it for what you need to survive. A gun, JR.
Well, I guess every industry, as people get their stimulus checks or get the little money they get to survive, are going to want to attract people to spend it in their arenas, the ones that are still collecting money in some kind of way. So, I mean, I guess it's not a surprise. It's like any other industry, if somebody makes, whoever makes masks, they're probably doing great. Grocery stores are not telling people, hey, don't come buy the Fritos and the Doritos, even though those aren't necessarily needed. Like, hey, still buy them. We'll take their money. So I get companies wanting to still get access to the money people have gotten. It just seems a little morbid in this particular case. So I don't expect him to pull back on it. I would just hope people have enough of perspective to see that this isn't necessary and that they're looking to just get it from you without giving you much in return, except for this false sense of security in buying more guns.
Well, and let's bear in mind, this isn't the manufacturers saying it. I mean, I'm sure they're saying it too. This is the NRA, which last I checked does not itself sell guns. So there is a financial connection we'll get to in just a sec, but they're not actually the ones selling it. And by the way, look, I think there should have been far more support for different people. And if you don't need it to pay for rent or food or medicine or whatever, it's still yours. You can use it for whatever you want. Seems kind of stupid to me. And I will just say, like, while I think you should be able to spend it on whatever you want, understand that conservatives love to point out when anybody gets money that's being spent on something they don't need. How many broadcasts did Bill O'Reilly do year after year that these supposedly poor people who complain about their pay, they still have money for TVs and microwaves and all this stuff. So if it's something not essential, like a place to store your food or heat it, they will point that out. If it's yet another gun, well, that's essential. Come on, get off our backs.
And well, we already. I mean, you go ahead. Go ahead. You probably can get.
Yeah, really fast. I just want to point out that look, one of the things that we try to ram home with our coverage of the NRA is that while they will pretend that it's about protecting your constitutional rights, or back in the day, early on, they were trying to say it was about safe and responsible gun ownership and training. It's not about that. It's a lobby front group for the gun manufacturers. It is designed to sell more guns. Take any opportunity, exploit it to sell more guns. And it's not like they don't get paid for this. So 4 of the 7 companies listed in the article have donated to the NRA. Springfield Armory, Crimson Trace, FN America, and Hornady. Springfield Armory is given between $1 and $4.9 million to the NRA. Crimson Trace is given between $100,000 and $250,000 million. FN America has given between $50,000 and $100,000, and Hornady has given between $25,000 and $50,000. So sort of convenient that they get money from the gun manufacturers, and then when this money is going out, suddenly taking government assistance is a great thing, but give it back to the gun manufacturers, who in turn will give them more money. And they will need it too, because recently times have been hard for the NRA. They're bracing for layoffs as the coronavirus has disrupted fundraising. So sort of convenient that they can turn this crisis into an opportunity for them.
You know, I mean, when you got your lobbying group, when you got your promoters, you got your PR group, which is all the NRA is for these folks, working for you, hey, you just let them work. It's like, hey, you guys have been convincing people for long enough. Continue to work for us. We'll continue to hand you the money to do so. It's a, you know, I guess it's the most obvious exchange that we could imagine for Americans right now.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, you know, domestic violence in homes as people are all locked down and quarantine is increased, and then people, victims of this in those situations, find themselves trapped with someone who has had these problems in the past, and to push more guns, you know,
Yep.
It's no different than any other day, but it just seems particularly irresponsible now.
Yeah, and you know, to add on, it's a great point. I want to add on just a little bit more. In early April, CNN reported that of 20 police departments serving large cities that provided statistics, quote, 9 saw double-digit percentage jumps in domestic violence cases or 911 calls in March, either compared to the previous year or to earlier months in 2020. And according to the Giffords Law Center, domestic violence incidents involving a gun are 12 times more likely to result in death than those where a gun is not present. And so one inconvenient truth that we continually say is that while you might have fantasies of fighting off bandits with your gun, the people who are most likely to die as a result of you bringing a gun into your home are yourself and those you live with. Those you love, they are the ones whose chance of death rises the second a gun takes residence in your house.
Yep.
But no, everybody's responsible, right? Everybody's a responsible gun owner, except for all those people that accidentally end up shooting themselves or the people that they love. Anyway, JR, thank you so much for joining us. Kind of a dark, serious day.
No, I was like, man, this is a little bit down, but man, I was going to say fun times, but I can't.
I know. I wish we had time to talk about Justin Amash, but maybe if he's still running in a week, we'll talk about it next Wednesday. How about that? But anyway, as always, thank you, and have a good day.
You guys have a good one. Sorry, last thing for me. Just want to point out to you guys, the quarantine beard is still going strong. John has bailed. John got tired of it somehow and just jumped off.
No.
Full disclosure, I did at least trim the mustache parts because they're hitting my lip, and it was a serious problem. Couldn't handle it.
Sounds weird, but it is so annoying.
It's the worst.
You were wrong though. I did not trim my beard. I condensed it. It's stronger and shorter. Anyway, thank you, JR.
Thank you again, you guys. See you.
See you later. Everybody at home, thank you so much for joining us throughout the show. And you got your dog today, so everybody should be very satisfied with that. I do want to catch up a little bit on these comments. By the way, hold on. Can I show this? Because obviously we had the vote between John Krasinski and Ryan Reynolds, and John Krasinski won by a lot. But I think this is probably either Craig or Bart pointed out that I'm going to show you this image. They have an alternate suggestion. Young Jason Lee. That does look a lot like Brett over there. Ooh, I think you guys might be onto something. Okay, so George Meade says, annual deaths is a strongman argument. We've seen roughly 60,000 die in about 30 days. At that rate, there would be 720K per year. Exactly. They're still comparing it to a year of a disease that we are fighting in every way that we can. I don't know why they don't understand that. But Bonnie says a whole new meaning to meat is murder, talking about forcing those workers to go back or lose their job. Let's see. If you look up the peer-reviewed research, you will find that meat produces toxins that are linked to dietary diseases in humans. Like other ape species, our digestive system isn't designed for meat. Yes, one of the arguments often provided for a lower or no meat diet. Malbec says the exact issue is why the Davos. This exact issue is why the Davos organized quarantine protests made a point to equate lockdown with slavery. Forcing people to go back to work is in fact slavery. They know what they're doing, or be ruined economically. Dave says there are more of us than them. They want you to forget that and be scared. JR is 100% right. Hugs from the UK. Thank you, Dave. Cujo says elite herd eat the rich and decided to flip it. Lockalil says, we are a sentient species that has the ability to choose not to cause harm to other sentient species. To choose otherwise is simply a choice to do harm, a choice to commit evil against other species. Thank you, Lockalil. Thank you. James says, Cthulhu is in charge in reference to my comment about the Elder Tours. Lil Yumper says, love JR Wednesdays. Seem they care about money more than people. Shocking. Yeah, we've been talking about that for some time. Strike says, John, you don't understand because you have a soul. They have nothing close to even a conscience and are obviously willing to hurt people. I largely agree. Obviously, it works out for them economically. I mean, these hosts are making a lot of money. Of course, as one of many werewolves, I have a moral responsibility to cull humans to reduce your impact on the planet. That's funny. Madeline says, may I have your dog, please, for my soul? I think JR would actually probably give up Sprocket. He's not the hugest dog person. Amanda says, there have been 5 to 6 ambulances at my apartment in the last 2 days. Meat plants here are tainted, but nope, everyone wants to open up. Nerf this. Yeah. Lil says, he's wearing a human mask over his true reptile form. Thank you. I guess he's already wearing the mask. Susan says, Pence's dead eyes scare me. Madeline says, a mask in my area of Oregon gets you laughed at. That's not good. I thought Pence was wearing a mask. Funny. Rob says, remember, you have to think in the most simple terms like his vanity. Trump can't wear a mask because his orange face paint will rub off. We'll get him a custom orange one. That seems safe enough. Let's see. Charlie says, the protesters are not demanding we reopen libraries and bookstores. Priorities. That's a good point. Let's see. Localiel says, have suicide incidents increased in U.S. since COVID-19? I'm not actually sure. That's a great question. I'm sure that there are people who are looking at that, though. Access to guns increases suicide rates. Totally, yes. And that's why when I was saying it increases the harm to people you live with, but also yourself. Kevin says, did you watch Don Lemon last night? I lost respect for Stacey Abrams. She believes Joe Biden didn't do anything, even though there's more evidence supporting Tara Reade than Blasey Ford. I was talking with my wife earlier, and we said that Biden should be talking about this. He is sending out female surrogates, and I understand they're defending him. They have free will. They could choose not to do it, but he should be the one that is talking. Christopher says, my theory is that Mike Pence is trying to take out Trump with COVID. If Pence did it, the U.S. is more afraid to relieve with Pence in charge. I think that he is attempting to protect Donald Trump. I think that that's more likely. I think that, I mean, in terms of optics, I mean, not physically. And I do think that if Trump was wearing a mask, that Pence would have too. He's not going to do it if Trump doesn't do it. The thing on the left says, John, what do you think of the grift happening with former senior advisors for the Bernie Sanders campaign with a dark money super PAC? Yeah, look, I haven't looked too much into that. The impression that I was given was that it is technically a super PAC in the same way that some other organizations are technically super PACs. We will have to see what they end up doing in terms of fundraising, I think. How the money is raised and how the money is spent. Tom Zawaki says on hashtag TDR Live, hey guys, my mother just got her $1,200 check. Her words to me, quote, what did I do to deserve this? My answer, you're 95. You've done enough to deserve that twice. 100%. Let's see. Kyle Clark or someone had retweeted a union leader at a Colorado meat plant where 5 workers have already died, condemned the order to keep working, saying this is not the Middle Ages. Workers are not serfs, toiling at the whim of the management lords of the manor. Exactly. Actually, similar to some of what we were saying earlier about peasants and feudalism and all that. Okay. Dominic Franco says, one thing I love about J.R. Jackson Wednesdays on the Damage Report, besides the fact that it's the best part about my lunch break, is how J.R. isn't afraid to engage trolling arguments dead on, like the helmet comment. It's blunt, refreshing, and hilarious. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Went a little bit over there. In fact, we might have to start extending the show just a little bit, because we want to make sure that we respond to a lot of what you're saying, but obviously then we don't get to quite as many topics. So we want to give you both. So maybe we'll expand the show a little bit in the near future. But thank you for those of you who joined us and have supported the show, especially David from Chicago. Thank you again for that very generous donation and for saying that you enjoy True North. I do like seeing that. And so tomorrow is going to be, the return of Erin Ryan, who's been the co-host a couple of times. Should be a lot of fun. Love her work, both her political work, but also her writing work in shows like Always Sunny and Mythic Quest. So it should be a lot of fun, and we'll see you then.